Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, and this will be the Week 14 Main-Slate breakdown and walkthrough. Sorry for missing it last week. I had some technical. I tried to do it from on the road. I was down in South Texas at deer camp, and I couldn't get the computer up and running with suitable internet to do the live stream. So sorry if you missed that. You can go to the ticket window and get your money back if you're tilted. There was a dude last week because of all this stuff and because the Ravens game got pushed back to what Wednesday or something, whatever it was last week, to where the tools were a day late, all coming out. And this dude emailed us and said he was gonna take legal action because the DFS cheat sheets weren't up until Saturday as opposed to Friday night. So shout out to that guy. But anyway, 13 game slate this week. I'm still working through a lot of it, so we'll talk it out as we go through. But just the two extra games, kind of interesting thing I noticed is that we're still, as of right now, as I'm recording this at nearly 3 p.m. Central on Saturday, we still don't have props from any sports book on the Detroit Green Bay game or on the Denver Carolina game. And for the Denver Carolina game, I think maybe that has to do with some of the COVID stuff, but it feels like that's pretty much been handled on the Carolina side. We'll talk about that. On the Detroit Green Bay side, I can't figure out what it is that they would. I don't understand what they would be waiting on. So maybe, I don't know, DeAndre Swift's status. It feels like it's pretty clear what's going on with him and Golladay. Regardless, we'll get to all that. We'll try and fire through these games a little quicker than usual since there are 13. Oh, and a quick reminder, man, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, if you could please click that you like it and write a good, or just like leave a comment, share, subscribe, just fucking hit some buttons down there. And then if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, let's see if we can get like 10 reviews from this podcast this week. And then I'll do it again next week for week 15 and moving on. But I won't do a week 15 podcast on here on the free feed unless I get 10 new reviews. So you can review it however you want. Say Alex sucks, whatever. But I need 10 new reviews, and I'll do this again in week 15. All right. Houston at Chicago. This game has a 46-point total. Houston's 1.5 point favorites after opening up as a pick 'em. We have 55% of the tickets as of right now on Houston, along with 54% of the money. 67% of the tickets are on the over. 86% of the money is on the over. So it looks like there's going to be some sharp action here on the over. Where to start? So Brandon Cooks is questionable. It seems like he's going to go. Not the best matchup, of course, going against the Bears. I should have pulled the matchup tool up before I started. But as usual, if I don't just click start and go, I keep putting it off. So sometimes I just click it and say, let the chips fall where they may here. It's Houston. This is the number 26 matchup on the week for opposing wide receivers. But, we did see Keke QT walk into the big role last week. He gets a big hike in price this week. I think Brandon Cooks would be fine to go back to if you wanted to. No David Johnson in this game. He's out with a personal matter. So I've heard, I was on the stream with Cardi and Chief Justice earlier at Roto Grinders. Those guys are on Duke Johnson. I'm simply not on Duke Johnson. I mean, this is the number 27 matchup for opposing running backs. There are only 6 worse matchups on this whole entire week. All we've seen from Duke Johnson, I mean, he had the one decent game on Thanksgiving, but even when he had volume, whenever David Johnson was out, he's not looked good as a Houston Texan. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, I've never been one of these guys that says Duke Johnson has the size to be a feature back and he has the, the underlying athletic traits and all this stuff. There are a lot of those people out there, and I can understand why they said it. But what I always say is that, through 3 different coaching staffs, or I guess how many when he was in Cleveland? So through 4 different coaching staffs, if you consider post Bill O'Brien as one of them, maybe 5 if you consider post O'Brien. I'd have to go back and look, but either 4 or 5. Nobody's ever committed to Duke Johnson. Nobody's ever seen him as a feature back. And, this could be a spot where just because, they are lacking in the passing game, they do have weapons out. No David Johnson. if he gets 80% of touches, I can kind of see it for 4,800. It's just on a week like this where we have 13 games, so many guys in smash spots. It's one of these weeks that I was talking earlier. It feels like a FOMO week to me, like a fear of missing out. I have a big fear of missing out on too many of these guys, and I can't afford to play everybody that I'm scared of fading. I can't play Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce and some of these other guys that will Tyreek Hill or Keenan Allen or some of the other guys at the very top of the wide receivers. You can't afford to do it. And so people are going to be looking for savings. And I think that people are going to be paying down at running back because that's where there are three options that are available to sort of pay down at. We're going to talk about Geo Bernard. We'll talk about Duke Johnson. We'll talk about J.D. McKissic. I have a clear favorite out of those guys that I like most. But Duke Johnson's in play. I'll bet you he's going to be 15 or so % owned. So it was just, that's something that we need to touch on here. And then for Chicago, and I mean, do you really want to play Desean Watson against a defense that can actually get decent pressure? I know he's been awesome. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I get it, but he's down his biggest weapon in DJ Moore. The run game's not DJ Moore. He's down his biggest weapon in Will Fuller. The run game should be throttled to some degree just due to the matchups. It's bad. It's a bad matchup to begin with. He can give up sacks. I'm not into it. Then for Chicago, it's a different story. It's kind of Chicago's a good matchup for it's good basically across the board here. So Chicago is the number 8 matchup for opposing quarterbacks, the number 2 matchup for opposing running backs, number 6 matchup for opposing wide receivers, the number 15 matchup for opposing tight ends. So we'll go through them. Mitchell Trubisky is probably in play. He's probably fine. You just wonder if on a week like this, with guys like Aaron Rodgers on the slate, with Mahomes on the slate, with Justin Herbert in a good spot, you wonder if those guys could kind of bury you. They could, but if you get 20, 22 something points out of Trubisky, you're probably good there. Let's just see. I just got an alert from the Fantasy Life app. I want to make sure it's not anything. So the Dolphins have elevated tight end Chris Mariak and defensive end Tyson Rendler from the COVID-19 replacements for Sunday's game. They've also elevated running back Elijah McGuire and placed Myles Gaskin on the reserve COVID list. So no Gaskin. So that takes away one of these 5K running backs who's actually a little bit cheaper on FanDuel, and he was actually popping in our model. So I will have to get that updated as soon as I get off the podcast. Basically, no Myles Gaskin. That's the news. And that's the Fantasy Life app. Please go and give it a download. Those guys are we've been partnered with them to do some content and stuff this year, and I've downloaded the app and I didn't think I would like it, but now I can't live without it, and it's free. So that's my testimony there on that. David Montgomery looks like he's going to be just a monster down the stretch. He's had 2 good weeks of good matchups. He has another good matchup this week. I was looking at his schedule moving forward for season long. I mean, he's going to be good for a couple of weeks if he keeps getting this volume with the matchups he has coming. So props to you if he's somebody you've managed to get onto your team in season long. But I think he's still cheap. He's probably better on FanDuel this week than he is on DraftKings. If you're looking to get up out of that tier we talked about with the Duke Johnsons, the Geo Bernards, etc. We have the prop in on David Montgomery that is pretty good. I mean, he's plus 105 to score. He's been a favorite to score in recent weeks, which worries me a little bit, but the Vegas books have him at 3.5 receptions and basically 90 total yards, plus 105 to score. He should, 6,500 on DraftKings. He should be able to get there. And I think on FanDuel, he rates as basically the 4th best value on the whole entire slate because he's only 6,600 over there where there's a $60K salary cap. Allen Robinson, that's going to be interesting. All the Bears wide receivers are interesting because if you consider what's going on in the Texans defensive backfield, we have now, we know that Bradley Roby got busted with the roids. Or presumably the roids, but also we have, and we know that Garyon Conley was placed on IR with the foot. I don't know, like 6 weeks ago. But Phillip Gaines is questionable this week with the knee and the shoulder. Keon Crossan has a foot and he's questionable. So it's a banged up Texans secondary. I really like Allen Robinson this week. And then make sure and keep in mind also Cole Kmet. Over the course of the last few weeks, he's been taking over from a routes run perspective, from a snap counts perspective, and a targets perspective from Jimmy Graham. And it feels like Mitchell Trubisky really likes that guy. So Cole Kmet, he's only 2,900, I think, on DraftKings, and he can be in consideration if you're daring enough to fade Travis Kelce. Okay, Minnesota at Tampa Bay. Minnesota 6-6, Tampa Bay 7-5 here for this one. The total in this game has risen to a 52.5 pointer. Tampa Bay 6.5 point favorites. 63% of the tickets are on the over on this game, with only 49% of the money. 61% of the tickets are on Tampa Bay, along with 72% of the money. And I was interested in Ronald Jones here in this spot versus Minnesota, just because it feels so hard if you're going to play Tom Brady. Who do you pick to pair him with? Do you pick Mike Evans? Do you pick Antonio Brown? Do you pick Chris Godwin? Mike Evans, of course, he'd been questionable early in the week, but he went from limited to practice on Wednesday to out on Thursday, but then back to full on Friday. So, he doesn't have an injury tag coming into this game with the hamstring. He should be good to go. Chris Godwin, he had the pins put in his finger, and then he played with them. And then I think, was it earlier this week or last? I think it was earlier this week. He just got the pins removed with a small procedure. So he was on the injury report for a small while, but I was listening to Dr. David Chow, and he says it shouldn't be an issue with him at all. It's funny. If you look at the props, based on salary on DraftKings, the props would indicate that Antonio Brown is the best play. Antonio Brown has a 5.5 reception, 58.5 yard over under. He is only 5,500, and in that sort of mid range of wide receivers that I don't think you'll see a lot of cash. I think a lot of cash teams are going to pay down for those running backs. They're going to pay up for Devontae Adams. They're either going to pair him with Aaron Rodgers, or they're just going to try and get in-game correlation, maybe play Matthew Stafford and pair him with Marvin Jones, especially if we get no Golladay. And what that kind of construction leaves you with is it leaves you with enough money if you're paying down at tight end to get up to either Adam Thielen or to Terry McLaurin. And so I don't think you're going to see many people in this Antonio Brown 5,500 in cash. And I'm not sure he's going to be that popular in tournaments either, just because it's so hard to pick the piece on this Tampa Bay side that you're going to want to go with. The Minnesota side is a completely different story entirely. That's Thielen, and it's Justin Jefferson. We do need to keep an eye on Kyle Rudolph. If he's on, or I think he's already said he's not going to go. Is he been declared out? Because I know that Irv is still questionable. Irv Smith is still questionable. Let's see. Do we have him out? Sorry, having to check here. So he's doubtful. So he's out. Irv Smith is questionable. If neither of those guys go, it could open up Tyler Conklin, who's a RosterWatch favorite from the Senior Bowl a few years back. Super fun player to watch. That dude's a beast and just a savage. I would love to play him this week and save a little bit of salary if he is available, because Tampa Bay is a team that has done a really good job with stopping the run, but it hasn't necessarily been as tough for opposing tight ends, which is kind of interesting whenever you consider the speed of their linebacking core. But Tampa Bay is, we know that they have good young players in Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean in the defensive backfield. But on the matchup tool, that thing's been trending towards more of like a top 12 to top 10 matchup for opposing wide receivers. I think that's just because it's just so hard for opposing running backs. They're coming off a bye week. That defensive front will be good and rested up. Dalvin Cook, for that matter, is not going to. No one's going to be on Dalvin. So if you want to play in a tournament and go against the grain, I think that going Dalvin Cook is probably fine. Tennessee at Jacksonville. Tennessee here is 7.5 point favorites. This game has it's down to a 52.5 point total from 53 where it sat at open. 67% of the tickets are on the Titans, along with 76% of the money. 64% of the tickets are on the under. 70% of the money is on the under. So a pretty even distribution there of where the public is as far as where the money is. People think that this game's going to go under, and they think that Tennessee is going to win. And of course, just Derrick Henry has a 108-yard rushing prop. He should absolutely smash here, because if you've watched, and last week I got so frustrated. I know a lot of people who had Derrick Henry probably also got really frustrated with the fact that, when they got down so early to start versus Cleveland, I mean, he kind of got scripted out, even after Vrabel had said during the week that we need to look to get Derrick Henry more involved. We can't have Derrick Henry we can't have Derrick Henry just go extinct because, this game script gets out of whack. He's one of our best weapons. And that's what kind of happened. It's just think in your head, how is this Jacksonville team that is just so beat up? How are they going to I just don't see how Tennessee's not going to be ahead. And if Tennessee's not ahead, how are they not feeding Derrick Henry? And I know what Cardi said on our Roto Grinders show. He said, and Cardi's really good in cash games. And he says you can't play him in cash because he's game flow dependent and because he doesn't catch passes. And I mean, I get those things. But here's the other thing. It's like there's nobody in the league that can just break off these 80-yard runs just like a big robot monster machine. Like where you get worried about playing Henry, though, is okay, you're paying almost $9,000 for him on DraftKings. So what does he need to pay that off? If we're just doing the old, and I don't even believe in this old 3x stuff. I think to win a tournament, you need more like 4x from most of your positions. But even if 3x, so what do we need? 27 points. So reverse engineer that. We get 100, let's say we get 120 yards and a touchdown. So we get 12 points plus a 3-point bonus. So we're at 15 points. We get a touchdown. We're at 17. We're like 22 points for 120 yards and a touchdown. It's almost like from Derrick Henry, you need 170 and a touchdown to even get to 3x. You need 170 and 2 touchdowns to get to 4x. That's a lot. I mean, and Derrick Henry can do it. You could see him go off for 225 and whatever versus Jacksonville. But we were all pretty sure that Derrick Henry. Here I am talking myself off Derrick Henry when I don't want to. I really think he, if he's like 50% owned, it's just. I mean, versus Jacksonville the first time he got 25 touches, but that went for 84 yards, 84 scoreless yards, and 2 targets and no catches. He had an 8.4 point fantasy day. And that was against Jacksonville. Now, granted, they've gotten more banged up, but they've got. I mean, I like Ryan Tannehill in this game too. I love Corey Davis for his price in this game too. I like AJ Brown for his price in this game as well. I think that the passing game for the Titans is probably every bit as viable as Derrick Henry is, given the pricing of these players. And so, with that being the case, I'm going to have to just totally hedge and say I'm going to play some lineups with Derrick Henry. In those lineups, I'm going to play the passing game. And I'm going to play some lineups without Derrick Henry. And in those lineups, I'm going to play the Tennessee Titans passing game. I'm going to stack it. I'm going to bring it back on the other side with DJ Chark, who our model really liked this week. Somebody who has a lot of peripherals going for him that is probably going to go underlooked. I was looking at Chris Gimino's ownership projections earlier. He only has DJ Chark at like a 5% ownership clip this week. So I think I'll only be playing him in spots where I'm stacking that game. But in spots where I'm stacking that game, I think I will be playing DJ Chark. Not in all of them though, because I learned a lesson last week about stacking, and it was such a bummer that every fucking Darren Waller team that I had a jet on the other side, and none of these jets got there because Frank Gore got hurt on the second play of the game. Brashad Perriman sucked, and I didn't have Crowder in my player pool, and I should have. And so basically my Waller lineups all had snowflakes because even though Waller was one of my favorite plays, I decided that I was going to be correlating him in those lineups and not just using him as a one-off. And I think looking back, the reason why was because as I was thinking about it, I was saying, well, to be able to get up to his price at $6K, what I need to take savings somewhere else. And like the Frank Gores of the world, the Rashad Perrimans of the world, these kind of guys afforded me those kinds of savings to where my lineups could look about like they did before, except for paying up with the tight end instead of going to some like dirtball like Ferkser or something like that. So I'm going to make a note this week that DJ Chark, while he's popping in our models, and while I feel like I'm going to use him as a bring back in these Tennessee Titans stacks that I use, or in stacks where I play Derrick Henry, or stacks where I play Tannehill and stuff, I need to make a note to myself that I don't always need to correlate these if it's a play that I don't just feel balls to the wall good about. And even though I like DJ Chark as a play, I don't feel balls to the wall good about him. I think that James Robinson is a play you can probably feel balls to the wall good about, because even though when he's down, he's an underdog, that guy just continues to keep coming through. Dallas at Cincy, we have a 3-point. Dallas is a 3-point favorite here, but only a 43-point total. 53% of the tickets are on Dallas, along with 53% of the money. 59% of the tickets are on the over, along with 45% of the money. So public's on the over. The sharps don't seem to be quite with them. Do you know who's on the over in this game? Is my boy Chief Justice 06, Will Priester. He's all over it. He's playing it from every angle that he can. He's playing a bunch of Andy Dalton. He's playing a bunch of Amari. He's playing a bunch of CeeDee Lamb. A lot of Gallup. Gallup's only 3,800. He's actually showing up with a pretty good prop this week on the Vegas tool. Of course, all these tools that I'm referencing you can find over at rosterwatch.com. Dallas basically is getting the number 9 matchup for opposing quarterbacks, the number 11 matchup for opposing wide receivers, the number 2 matchup for opposing tight ends, the number 17 matchup for opposing running backs. We have Ezekiel Elliott, who earlier in the week we'd heard had a calf strain. Closer towards the end of the week, whenever he met with reporters via virtual Zoom availability, he mentioned that it was not a strain, it was a contusion, which I then heard Dr. David Chow talk about, saying if it's a contusion, that means nothing structural. That's something he feels a lot better about. We'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, Tony Pollard would come clearly into focus as the best play on the slate if Zeke couldn't go here versus Cincy and their bad defense. But Zeke at 6,600 is a play on his own, kind of, and nobody's going to be on him. And at some point, don't you know, I mean, I know the offensive line is banged up. I know it's a low total, but they're favorites. It's still Zeke. He's 6,600. I'm almost thinking of I'm not sure I could play him in cash, but I've thought about it. I think he's a good play. I think especially for tournaments, if he's, just if you play a few tournaments, I think getting Zeke into 1 or 2 of them is fine. And then, we talked already on the other side about Geo Bernard. He's, I've been skeptical about Geo before whenever he's going against like these Ravens or the Steelers or some of these bad matchups. He said this Cowboys team, the defense is not good. It's the 4th best matchup for opposing runners. I think even little tiny, little puny, squirmy Giovanni. Hey, it's a Giovanni. When he plays against these shitty teams, I think those are the kind of games where, if we do get 4 catches out of him and he can squirm around for, 45 yards between the tackles, we can get another 40 yards from him through the air and maybe a touchdown. All of a sudden, you feel like you feel real good for a guy you're getting for, right at 5K? Maybe just under 5K. Let me make sure I got that right. Giovanni Bernard. Yeah, 5K. So I like that there. I don't know how much I'm going to – I mean, they need to tell us if they're going to be playing Finley or Brandon Allen or what the deal is. And I'm not going to stick my toe in any kind of Tyler Boyd bucket or T. Higgins. I know Dallas sucks. I know everybody's banged up. But Tyler Boyd got there last week on 1 play. I believe that was his only catch. Was the play where he got outside on the little wheel route out of the slot and then just ran it up the sidelines on these idiots. 1 reception on 4 targets last week. He got 14.2 DK points. Don't think I'm going back there. But it will be I think by Derek Carty's metrics in the blitz, it is set to be the fastest paced game on the slate, and we certainly like that. Arizona at the Giants. Arizona's 2.5-point favorites here. 46.5 point total. 62% of the tickets are on the Cardinals, along with 67% of the money. 66% of the tickets are on the over, along with 86% of the money. Public likes the over. Sharps like the over here. They like the over 46.5. They asked Kyler this week, the Arizona Republic. I thought it was the Athletic. It was the guy at the Arizona Republic. He said, he's like, why aren't you running? And Kyler's like, if you sit, like, you watching what's going on with these defenses, they're begging me to hand this football off. It isn't the shoulder. My shoulder's fine. So no one's going to be on Kyler because he hasn't been any good since that game where they had the Hail Murray. Not that he hasn't been any good, but he hasn't been smashing the same way that he was to start the season. But, we come into this game, Kenyon Drake's a little bit banged up. We'll see what happens with him. He doesn't have all of his offensive weapons back returned just yet. So I don't know. I think that the Giants have been playing well defensively, though, and traveling there, it could. I don't think I'm going to play him, but what I'm trying to do is kind of maybe talk myself into maybe playing him in a tournament where all these Arizona guys are going to be sub 5% ownership. It could be he's not like he's popping on the models or he's an optimal play or anything like that, but I think that there's a lot of sharp people out there in DFS that are just at least trying to talk themselves into the idea of Kyler Murray whenever you can get him at such an ownership discount. And then for the Giants, I mean, can you keep rolling out Wayne Gallman? I guess you can. I think that his prop was certainly liked him last week, but I'm not sure the prop this week was anything that. Yeah, so he has a 56.5 rushing yard, 1.5 reception, 10.5 receiving yard line here from the sports books. Only plus 120 to score. That's just at 5,700. I don't think that's probably the price range. It's just a little bit higher than I'm looking to pay for these, super pay down guys where it feels like you can get that same sort of, like a median output of like 11 points on DK. You feel like you could probably get that elsewhere for $700 to $900 cheaper. With Daniel Jones coming back, I'm interested in Evan Ingram, who's just so much better of a play whenever Daniel Jones is there, it feels like. And Evan Ingram, I believe, is only 4,200. He's right there in a cluster with a lot of guys who I think will be popular, the Hunter Henrys of the world, the Robert Tunyons of the world, those kinds of guys. So just something to keep in mind there. The Chargers have activated Justin Jackson from IR. He'll be available to play Sunday versus the Falcons. Interesting. So yeah, so if you play in season long, maybe you should go run to the waivers and pick up Justin Jackson just in case anything swindly happens. He's still a young man. Justin Jackson's only 24 years old. Kalen Ballage turns to dust. I guess we'll talk about that game eventually. Again, from the Fantasy Life app, I would go and download it. It's free. If you hate it, you can just erase it. Denver Broncos at Carolina Panthers, a 44.5 point total here that's dropped from 40. And we're still not getting – why does the total keep dropping? Why do we not get any props? Is it all because of DJ Moore has COVID? I mean, I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. Is there something else going on? Quarterbacks both seem like that. I mean, 66% of tickets are on the under, 78% of the money, 72% of the tickets are on the Panthers, 67% of the money. Matchups, Carolina is facing bad matchups for everybody except the running backs, where it's a top 12 matchup. So Mike Davis comes into play. I can't believe that Denver is showing up as such a bad matchup, even with all the injuries they've had on their defense. So I'm not exactly buying what the matchup tool is selling here with this one, even though the injury stuff has been inputted into it and should be being taken into account of. The Broncos' pass defense is swindled right now. Bryce Callahan was recently placed on IR. AJ Bouye was suspended for whatever the same. Dude, he used to be a Texan. He might be into the same shit that Bradley Roby was. Right. So they have guys that are out and guys who are hurt. If there's no DJ Moore, like, I love Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel here in this game. I think Mike Davis is a good play here in this game. There is some line of thinking that maybe a week off could have done Mike Davis some good. He was looking like he was really kind of huffing and puffing, and like he was at his wits' end. He wasn't running very well. Maybe he could get that spring in his step back that he got when he first stepped in for Christian McCaffrey in a pretty decent matchup here in what should be his last game, filling in for him. And what a swindle for McCaffrey that, it's a quad or a calf or something now. It just goes from ankle to shoulder to now it's a quad. It lost season for that guy. And on the Denver side, no, I mean, I don't know. People keep talking about Tim Patrick. I don't care about that. We got some Jags kicker news coming in on the Fantasy Life app. Kansas City and Miami. What a game. Kansas City 7-point favorites here, 15.5-point total. 53% of tickets are on KC. 79% of the money's on KC. 74% of the tickets are on the over. 90% of the money's on the over. Whew. Everyone's on the over. And see, Patrick Mahomes could bury me this week. Tyreek Hill could bury me. Travis Kelce could bury me. It's almost like you want to make stacks of this team. But the more I think about it, I think about Miami, and this worries me. It's the first time I've looked at the betting percentages, and I've looked at the percent of handle versus the percent of money. So the sharps are on the over. And my deal was like with Tua on the Miami side, we now know. Okay, there's a lot to think about with the Miami side because we just got the Myles Gaskin news. Savant Ahmed is out. Is DeAndre Washington going to become a thing? Let me look at the snaps tool from last week. Like, what is, because we know it won't be Patrick Laird. Is DeAndre Washington going to become a thing? Jesus Christ, man. Come on. Snap counts. Serious producer wanting me to check in on stuff for tomorrow morning's show during the middle of this thing. Sorry. I mean, I'm having to look something up because this Myles Gaskin shit just came in. Lynn Bowden Jr. played 44% of snaps last week. Patrick Laird played 27% of snaps. So was DeAndre Washington even activated? This could be something where I don't know what they're going to do at running back. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll look for news. They did activate. God damn it, dude. I'll fucking email you back in a minute. Who did they activate off of the IR? Okay. That's just something I'm going to need to look at. They don't really have that many good options. It would seem like it's DeAndre Washington, but Matt Breida was still on the COVID list. So we'll see. But with Tua, I just don't like. How's the offense going to even go? What does this Miami offense look like? How are we going to get to this 53-point total? Is it just Patrick Mahomes putting his foot on the gas and just throwing it and throwing it and throwing it? That's what made me think it's like, man, it's a good Miami defense too. It's really good. They man up on the outsides. People talk about how Tyreek Hill, it doesn't even matter because Byron Jones and Xavier Howard are these bigger kind of dudes that could, they're tough man corners and they can't run with Tyreek Hill. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's right. No one can run with Tyreek Hill, but I mean, fucking Byron Jones runs a 4.3. It's like he can kind of run with him. If there would be a man, you could maybe see some shit where it's like, they all got their backs to Mahomes. Maybe he tucks the ball, runs it a little bit more often than we would normally sort of see him do. We know that these guys can blitz. We know that Mahomes is good versus the blitz. But it's like, when we're talking about Mahomes, just the epic smash game, does the epic smash game come in a game where we're talking ourselves into relying on something he could do with his feet because of the man scheme and because of the blitzing? Like, I don't know. I'm going to play some Mahomes, but I can see why there's some people that are good players that are fading him. And this whole Myles Gaskin thing, just keep following us on Twitter. I'll make sure and tweet out about this when I have better thoughts. I just don't know. I mean, they can't keep going with Patrick Laird and Lynn Bowden. I think that DeAndre Washington is going to have to kind of be a thing. Revenge. DeAndre Washington, revenge versus the Chiefs. I don't even know if he's going to be active, but I mean, I love the idea of it. okay. So, we talked about the guys. We talked about that. Next game here, Indy at Las Vegas. Already the 3 p.m. games. But Jesus, there's a bunch of these 3 p.m. games. We'll fire through them. Indy's 3-point favorites here. This game has a 52-point total. 50% of the tickets are on Indy, along with 84% of the money. 70% of the tickets are on the over, along with 74% of the money. So people like Indy here. They like the game to go over here. No Josh Jacobs, it doesn't look like. So Devontae Booker's in about the same spot he was last week, and I didn't feel as comfortable with Devontae Booker last week, much more comfortable with David Montgomery. Just the same thing this week. Darren Waller is facing our worst matchup of the whole week for opposing tight ends, so I'm not back on him. If I'm paying up, I'm getting to Kelsey, and that's just that. We talked about it earlier, the good outside corners, Xavier Howard and Byron Jones for the Dolphins. And I know nobody can run with Tyreek, but those guys can run with – I guess they can't run with Hardman either, but those guys can run with Demarcus Robinson. Those guys can run with Sammy Watkins. Where you can get them is where in the slot where they have Nick Needham lined up. That's where Travis Kelce's going to be. That's an epic mismatch. Anyway, no Waller for me this week after the 50-point monster last week. No, I don't like the Raiders really here. And I like the Colts. I don't know where the production is going to come. I think if I was going to play one Colt, it would be Jonathan Taylor. And even with Jonathan Taylor, he got there last week. But boy, take it from somebody that had him in just a lot of different spots in season long and in DFS. It was a sweat for him to get there, man. Jordan Wilkins was still in for 19% of the snaps. Nyheim Hines was in for 33% of the snaps. Jonathan Taylor got there on less than 50% snap clip last week. He got 16, 135, and 1. He's awesome. This is a great matchup for JT, and he's cheap enough to be in consideration, but that's the only place that I'm going. I'm not interested in any of these other guys. The Jets at the Seahawks. This game has a 47-point total. The Seahawks are 14.5-point favorites. 54% of the tickets are on the Jets, along with 32% of the money. 63% of the tickets are on the under. So is 48% of the money. And this game sets up to me a lot like the game whenever the Jets went to Kansas City. And a lot of people were saying, like, I can't play Mahomes. I can't stack him with these guys because this game's going to get out of hand. They're just going to run the ball down their throat. Remember we talked that week. We said, well, there's another part of me that says, but it's Patrick Mahomes versus the shittiest defense there is. And so you're like, we'll play him, right? So maybe we should play Russ and play DK Metcalf and lock it. Like, nobody's talking about DK Metcalf at all. I got through my whole fucking show today on Roto Grinders on the Blitz with Derek Carty and with Chief Justice 06. And we got through the whole wide receiver section, hitting on basically everybody. We were talking about guys like Braxton Berrios for the Jets. And DK Metcalf didn't even come up. So, he's one of these guys that feel like people aren't going to have him because, look, you have 4 big guys. You have DK Metcalf at the top. You have Keenan Allen at the top. You have Devontae Adams at the top. You have Tyreek Hill at the top. It's all. If I got to list those guys in order 1 through 4, maybe I do have DK Metcalf in 4th, and I think a lot of people will. For those reasons, he's not going to be owned at all. Chris Carson. Pete Carroll said during the week this week that Chris Carson was not quite back to 100% last week. Whenever he returned from injury, still he was used fairly strong. If he was out there for 58% of snaps, it was better than Jonathan Taylor. He had 6 targets. So he had 16 touches for 110 yards and a touchdown. He's saying that he should be even more this week. And with the fact that they do want to run the football and the fact that they feel like that correlates with their defense getting better, which is something that they desperately want, you could see this being a Chris Carson game. So if you're not into Russell Wilson and DK or any of that stuff for tournaments, I think Chris Carson, given his price, is pretty good. He's right there at the same price level as, I believe he's kind of next to Ezekiel Elliott and stuff. Let's see. Chris Carson. Yeah, he's right here. Like no one's going to be on Chris Carson. He's $1,000 cheaper than Austin Eckler. People are going to be all over Austin Eckler this week. Maybe not with this Justin Jackson stuff. And then on the Jets side, we just need to keep an eye on Jamison Crowder. We know that Denzel Mims is out. We know it's a great matchup for opposing wide receivers. Frank Gore looks like he'll be out. So Ty Johnson could come into play. I'm not going to go there. in the 4K range. I'm more comfortable with guys like McKissick, guys like Geo Bernard, maybe Duke Johnson. But, I mean, he should certainly probably be in your player pool if he is going to be the primary runner. And he's going to be getting those touches again for like 4.2K. And then just with the wide receivers, Rashad Perriman looks like he's going to be a great play. If Crowder doesn't go, Braxton Berrios is stone minimum, the very minimum cost. And whenever Darnold's been in and Crowder's been out, Braxton Berrios, like we've talked about it before, where the targets have been funneled in the slot with Crowder. So Braxton Berrios probably becomes, if Crowder's out, that probably kind of becomes a pretty good play on DraftKings mainly. Yeah, I mean, I think he's only 4,800 over on FanDuel. So this is a week where we need some savings to get up to those, like we said, those FOMO guys. Man, we have fear of missing out this week. At least I do. And I'm looking for some savings. I think Berrios, if there's no Crowder, is interesting there. I don't know if we're going to have that information coming into lock. And are there any good swap options here? Maybe you could just leave yourself the extra 900. No, it's not, because you don't want to do that to swap to Perriman. I don't know. Maybe you could look at one of these. Is there Indy? There's not an Indy swap. I don't think there's a Green Bay swap. Maybe is there a Marquez Valdez-Scantling swap? If Crowder goes, maybe a Quintez Cephas or something like that in the Detroit Green Bay game. Jalen Guyton or something similar. Or no, in the Atlanta game, since we have no Julio Jones, maybe a swap to a Brandon Powell or a Christian Blake. Those are just some ideas. If you put in Berrios and it turns out Crowder does go, those are some swap options for you for late swap to the second half of the main slate. All right. Green Bay at Detroit. Detroit's 8-point favorites. Green Bay's 8-point favorites. 54.5 is the over-under. 51% of the tickets are on Green Bay, along with 52% of the money. 67% of the tickets are on the over, along with 79% of the money. This is the game, man, as far as I'm concerned. I love it. I think that Devontae Adams is just a lock for double-digit catches. They probably don't even have a prop for him this week because he probably just broke the props machine, whatever that thing spits out, those props. They get down to the goal line, and they're not even trying to hand it to Aaron Jones anymore. I don't know if it's Aaron Rodgers trying to break some kind of records or trying to win the MVP or what he's doing, man, down there at the goal line. But he fires that thing in there to Devontae Adams. It's like an extension of the run from like the 2-yard line. It's wild, and just there's so much volume up and down the field. These are great matchups across the board via the matchup tool. For the Packers, it's the number 6 matchup for opposing quarterbacks, the number 1 matchup for opposing running backs, number 4 matchup for opposing wide receivers, the number 12 matchup for opposing tight ends. So Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan. I mean, those are obviously my 4 preferred options. And if you wanted to be crazy, Aaron Jones isn't going to be very owned at all, just because people are going to be so into playing Devontae Adams. And they're going to look back at last week and say that, well, he had a 70-yard run that saved his bacon and stuff. So Aaron Jones is clearly a great tournament play. I mean, just a natural, obvious leverage play. And then for Detroit, it looks like we're not going to have Kenny Golladay. So right back to, TJ Hawkinson is somebody we'll probably have our focus on, although Green Bay has been a tough matchup for opposing tight ends. It's actually been a kind of tough matchup for wide receivers and quarterbacks too. Green Bay is not a terrible defense where they've been able to get beat is by the run. You just worry with DeAndre Swift coming back, still questionable. The staff talking about maybe limiting him a little bit, and the fact that he's up in that 6K range. I think he's fine to play in season-long leagues, but I don't think I'm going to be paying up for him in DFS and anything except the most wild, mass multi-entry tournament, which I don't even do. I hand build as many tournament lineups as I can and move on with life after I get my cash lineup in. And I just can't see myself, clicking on DeAndre Swift's name, given the players that he has around him and the questions about his usage. But the matchup there does look good. The fact is, from what Cardi said earlier, the Devontae Adams projection from the blitz is the best projection the blitz is the third best projection the blitz has ever had on a wide receiver this week. And he's been doing this thing for like 4 years. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, the Falcons at the Chargers. The Falcons are 1.5-point favorites, which is odd to me. 49 is the total here. 60% of the tickets are on the over, 86% of the money on the over. So sharp money on the over. 54% of the tickets are on the Chargers, only 48% of the money. I love playing Herbert. I love playing Keenan Allen. I love playing Hunter Henry here. This matchup for the Chargers is the number 3 matchup for opposing tight ends, number 3 matchup for opposing wide receivers, the number 5 matchup for opposing quarterbacks, but clearly a pass funnel situation is number 29. So the 4th worst matchup for opposing runners. We've talked about on here a million times before exactly what the reason is why Atlanta's so tough against runners. It has to do with the way Raheem Morris coaches. It has to do with the personnel that Atlanta has in their defensive front. It has to do with the fact that it's just so easy to pass on Atlanta and why fucking run on them. But you gotta figure that Justin Herbert, after just taking that absolute beating last week, is going to be airing it out to Keenan Allen and really, really exposing these guys in that sort of, I know it's not under Dan Quinn anymore, but the defense still operates in the same way. It's a bend, but don't break zone defense. That's where we like Keenan Allen. So it's a great spot for him. I'm having trouble fitting both him. I can't fit in. It's really hard to fit in Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen. It's a FOMO week, man. You're gonna have fear missing out with a lot of these lineups, and I think it at some point you just have to embrace that. And Anthony Lynn's the worst head coach ever. So who knows what's going to happen here? Maybe that's why the Falcons are favored. But they don't. I'm not going to pay up for Eckler. I'm not going to do it. Now we got the Justin Jackson news. I'm not going to do it. I think a lot of sharp people are on it though. So I should mention that, look at projections. If you look at projections, you'll see that Eckler projects well. I mean, he's gotten a shitload of targets these last couple of weeks. You just wonder, is that really the offense that they want to be running? Are they really going to lose 45-0 every week and be a negative game script where they got to throw? It's been 2 weeks of pretty negative game scripts and sort of shitty coaching. So Justin Jackson coming back, price is $7K. It's an awkward price range. I don't think I'm going to be paying up for him. I'm certainly not going to play Todd Gurley. He is minus 135 to score this week. No Julio Jones. So, Russell Gage comes into play. I think that the main thing we talk about here is what's up with Calvin Ridley. Hayden Hurst has a really good prop. And the Los Angeles Chargers are, they need to get Derwin James back because whenever they don't have him, they're just so bad versus opposing tight ends. This is our number 8 matchup for opposing tight ends this week. No Julio Jones. You look at Hayden Hurst's splits with and without Julio Jones. It's significant enough to where the model really did recognize that and pushed him up. I saw the prop come in as Hayden Hurst is the second best value on DraftKings this week via the Vegas tool. So I think Hayden Hurst is a good play down in that. Is he just sub 4K or is he just over 4K? 3,700. So good way to get exposure to good way to get exposure to that game that feels like everybody's picking the over in it. 86% of tickets are on the over, man. Sharp money's on the over in that game, and it's a 49-point total. So you like that. And then I think with the auxiliary guys, Brandon Powell, Christian Blake, I think Olamide Zaccheaus is actually, he got put on IR. So we have Brandon Powell, who could be in play as sort of the tertiary wide receiver target, or it could be Christian Blake. And those are guys, like I talked about earlier, I would just have in my back pocket in case I wanted to get on Berrios in hopes that Crowder was going to be out for the Seattle game at min salary. Those are 2 options that you could not have to save yourself a bunch of money to be able to pivot off of and get onto another play that was at least to where you weren't drawing dead. Whereas if Crowder's playing, Berrios, it won't get on the field and you'll be drawing practically dead. Those guys should probably see, at minimum, 35 to maybe up to 60% snap participation for each of them in a pretty good matchup. Okay, Washington at the 49ers. 43.5 is the total. San Francisco's a 3-point favorite here. 51% of the tickets are on the over. 27% of the money is on the over. So sharps think this thing goes under 43.5, which should kind of be the first signal to you. Pretty much avoid anybody you can in this game. 54% of the tickets are on San Francisco, only 53% of the money. So a slight majority like San Francisco, a slight majority of the money on San Francisco. The only play in this game there are two plays. We always have to consider playing Terry McLaurin, but with Adam Thielen being virtually the same price as McLaurin, it kind of takes him out of play for me. I know our model likes McLaurin. It's always going to like him. He's on the cheat sheets. By the way, I need to get Gaskin off the cheat sheets. Whenever I get off, I need to make that note. Gaskin. It's J.D. McKissick, and I'm going to be playing him in my cash lineup. I know I will because we keep talking about the Duke Johnson, Geo Bernard, J.D. McKissick kind of trio right there at 5K or sub 5K that we can use for cash games. And McKissick, with no Antonio Gibson, it's just, he's going to get the receptions. He's going to get the touches. He ranks out as the best value on the Vegas tool for both DraftKings and for FanDuel, and that's my only interest in this whole game. All right, finally, New Orleans at Philly. This is good. We're going out with a real fucking thud here, ladies and gentlemen. New Orleans is 7.5-point favorites. Philly here, the total's fallen from 44 to 42.5. 68% of the tickets are on the Saints, along with 85% of the money. 50% of the tickets are on the under. 85% of the money's on the under. Jalen Hurts season? We'll see. I'm not playing this game. It's funny. Whenever I did this game for the Vegas tool, it literally had I'm not even sure it had one player that projected a value of over 2x. And that's just what you get whenever the receiving options for the Eagles have Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and there are two tight ends of consequence in Ertz and Goddard, and there's Travis Fulgham, and there's Jalen Reagor, and now they're putting in Greg Ward, now Alshon Jeffrey, and all this stuff. And Miles Sanders is, they won't even use him anyway, and he's going up against the toughest run defense in the National Football League and the worst matchup on the whole matchup tool. And could you play Jalen Hurts by himself and hope he has a blow-up game? Yeah, maybe you could, but the fact of the matter is if he has a blow-up game, what you're depending on him rushing for a few touchdowns and managing to, defy all odds with a heroic kind of game versus a defense that's actually really coming on, that's getting healthy in the Saints. And I don't see it. And I also don't see it being this high-flying situation where on the other side, Taysom Hill is just kind of doing this thing where he doesn't even throw the ball to Alvin Kamara. The offense isn't anywhere near as explosive. I'm not sure this is the kind of environment where I'm interested in investing resources in a game like daily fantasy where I have the whole player pool available to me. So we wish you guys the best of luck. We got some dude named Mike Brophy on in the chat that looks like a real douchebag. So you can go fuck yourself. To the rest of you guys, love you, man. We'll see you next time. Peace.